Missy Lou Who. How are you? Is my favorite fan watching tonight? I'm tired, but I'm doing all right. I talked to my daddy. I talked to my brother. I talked to Shelby. All since 7 o'clock. So I get low down on everybody, and we're all good. I took a nap. Took a really good nap. Took over an hour nap. Hi, Reese. What you doing, Bubba? What's Reese doing? Are you watching Nene? Huh? Are you watching Nene? So what you call him is Reese? I started to say Hulk, and I thought, no, that's not right. I love it. I love it, little man. What you doing, Reese? Huh? What you doing, baby? Are you a big boy? Huh? Is Reese a big boy? You said he likes the voices, right? Oh my goodness. I cannot believe. Reese. What you doing, Bubba? I cannot believe I tested positive for COVID this morning, of all mornings. I was like, crap. Guess that just proves I'm not needed because they did just fine without me, huh? But I talked to Daddy. He's been up walking with a walker. He was sitting in a chair. And when I got off, he made me get off the phone with him so that he could go try to pee. He has not peed or pooped since before surgery this morning. And I was like, dang, I have a procedure done and I have to pee and poop both before I can even leave. Yeah. And I think I got it last week sometime. Maybe 4th of July even. Because I had a sore throat on Monday. Monday was when I was around that girl from work. There's no way it's going to start making me sick that quick. They said it usually takes about 5 days to start seeing the effects. So that would have been last week. And I was trying to think. I don't even remember last week except for the 4th of July stuff. How do you know Nina's on here? wonder if the author's going to be here tonight. She sent me her book like ages ago, so. I don't know where you saw her name. Oh, there it is. You did see her name. She said, "Hi, everyone." Right before the strain. I missed it. Neener Beaner. Yeah, but they're saying this strain is highly contagious. There she is. Hello, Miss Aundrea. And I apologize if I say your name wrong. Welcome to the crazy house. It's Jackie. Jackie is in the house. Aundrea, this is chaos at its best. You in the right place, sister. It's chaos at its best. So, you guys are gonna have to forgive me. I've been fighting sinusitis since Memorial Day weekend, and then this morning I tested positive for COVID. So, here's to being sick, everybody. Fuck my life. I took 2 rounds of antibiotics for the sinusitis. Felt fine all week. A slight sore throat on Monday, but I went into the office Monday. And whereas my air conditioner here at home is in floor registers, I mean, it's heat and air, but it's up to the floor. The ones in the office, of course, are in the ceiling. So I thought, my throat is sore from the air there. Not to mention it's probably cleaner at work than it is here. Well, same day I had the sore throat, one of my other teammates came in. Briefly, I was not around her hardly at all. We talked a little bit, but she was far enough away. She was 6 feet away because they still have mandatory distancing at work. And she tested positive that night for COVID. So I ended up calling the nurse because today my daddy had hip surgery. I called the nurse on Tuesday when I found out she tested positive for COVID, saying, "Okay, do I need to worry? Because I have to go to the hospital to be with my dad." She said, "Get a home test Thursday morning before you leave the house. It may or may not show up because it's not been 5 days." So, and I took a nap, y'all. So I took a test this morning and it didn't even think about teasing me. It was bright and shiny and there before I could even get the swab in the thing. So, yeah. Tested positive, so I'm in quarantine. But Big Daddy, I go in there later on, tell him, I heard him waking up. I go in there as he's waking up and I'm like, "Oh yeah." But he's like, "Why are you still here?" And I'm like, because I tested positive for COVID." He's like, "Get the fuck away from me." And I'm thinking, dude, 2 hours ago, I just crawled out of that bed with you. So, if I've got it, you got it. So just get over yourself. But he refuses to take a test. So that's up to him. As long as we treat it like he's got it. And see, he's had this crud too. All right, y'all tired of me hearing him talking to me about, y'all tired of me talking about being sick? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it's like whatever. As long as he's careful about who he's around, I don't care. Because he's got one friend that just finished up chemo radiation or something today, his treatment. So he's not to get around him. But he wouldn't have got around him anyway because of the head crud anyway. I mean, and we've both been tested for COVID during the middle of all this head crud, and we didn't have it. So this is something new. But I was like, sore throat's the only thing I felt. And I only felt it that one day. And it wasn't even all day. It was just enough. The only reason I noticed it is because I was at the office. I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know anymore. I give up. All right. Y'all ready for me to talk about this book? Quit talking about myself. By the way, my daddy is doing great. For those that didn't hear it earlier, my Papa Bear, not Big Daddy, but my Papa Bear, had hip replacement surgery today. He's up walking with a walker, and he's eating. He was sitting in a chair when I talked to him. My brother and my stepmom were up there with him, so he's all good. He's doing good. So I just want to thank you, everybody, for your prayers. It's been a rather crazy, chaotic day, week, whatever. So, all righty. Aundrea, like I said earlier, my apologies if I speak names wrong. I'm horrible at names. Jackie can tell you, Vincey can tell you, Nina can tell you. Where's everybody at? Anyways, this book is called Timeless Devotion by Miss Aundrea Methvin. And if I said that wrong, my apologies. Aundrea, is this your first book? I haven't read it yet. I'll be honest with you. I've been reading one series since March. I have not had time to read anything else because I can't finish that stupid series. The books go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So we're getting ready to see. It looks like you got a future ahead of you for what little bit I've read. So I'm excited. I love to read newbies. All righty. So take my glasses off. All right. Prologue. A widowed peasant maid caught the eye of. You guys know I have a hard time with some of these Scottish and Irish stuff, so there's no accents, y'all. I got it in my blood. I don't need the accent. A widowed peasant maid caught the eye of Laird James Stewart. He was the richest man, the most handsome who could provide for her and her son Liam. The Laird was kind and a gentleman, even paying for Liam's tutoring, and for her, he would be her savior from a life that she wasn't meant to be. She married the Laird within a fortnight and enjoyed all the adulations of being lady of the keep. Yes, I'm still waiting on that. I have a splendid daddy, not a sugar daddy. I need a sugar daddy. That will allow me to keep my splendid daddy because I kind of like him. She was bought a dark mountain horse, her only enjoyment other than her son. The great beast was gentle as she. The lady named her Ire for her spirit. Ire was free range when she found a small swaddle bundle and very gently lipped it until she could pick it up and brought it to her lady. As she handed the swaddled bundle out, popped the tiny paw of a cat. But Lady Stewart knew there was more to this little one. As she gently picked up the cub, it started to change shape to a human child. A mass of dark curls cascaded down the back of the little girl. Her eyes were as wide and dark as a fawn. That is how the lady came up with a name for the child, Aundrea. For one so small, she already knew she would have more intellect and power than anyone would ever know. She handed the child to one of her handmaids to have the child cleaned and dressed, even if it was in peasant wear, to sneak the child into the keep. Liam saw the child and almost instantly wanted to play with the new child in the castle, never knowing that she was more than she appeared. Lady Stuart kept the child close, and eventually, when the Laird had fallen for those dark honey colored eyes, and eventually, even the Laird had fallen for those dark honey colored eyes. Only when Aundrea came of age did the troubles begin. So, for her safety, the lady had her moved to the stables to keep her safe from the cruel hands of the Laird. Aundrea was happy working with the horses. Even the large stable master protected her. She cleaned the paddocks and shined saddles as well as reins and headstalls. She loved the horses and would never harm any of them. And it got under her skin one day when the large son shoved one of the horses and went to pick up a whip within the utterance of "Dumb Fleabag." Aundrea snapped and pushed his lordship into a pile of manure that she had just cleaned out of Odin's paddock. He yelled out of shock and then complete awe that someone below him would do such a disrespect. "Your lordship needs to watch his step in this place." Oh, "Your lordship needs to watch his step in this place. Maybe you should go back to the keep and take a bath. Your stench is offending Odin and others, so please go," was all that Aundrea said. Liam stood and dusted off, and then, with his nose in the air, only made things worse by uttering, "Girl, remember to stay in your place, and little Hellcat, you better stick to cleaning the stables. You are nowhere near my status." Andrea stifled a giggle as she watched the royal brat waddle back to the keep, leaving her giggling behind her hand because the butt of his trousers covered in green against his brown riding trousers. Lady Stuart was quick to reprimand both, but had to also giggle at the beginnings of what her visions had already told her. That spring, Angelique started her visits at first. She was sweet as sugar and kind to all, but as the next 3 years came to pass, she, like so many others, started to show their true nature. Lady Stuart was against the match to come. Lady Stuart was against the match to come, but her husband had all the power even over her son. The nights were the only moments of true happiness Lady Stuart saw in her son's eyes. Her little rescue of a stablemate was naughty when the moon rode at its great fullness, as it was when she would go for rides, exercising the horses as if it were daylight. Even covered in dirt and soot, with her pockets filled with oats and thyme, Aundrea was lovelier than Angelique could ever be, even with her golden hair and sky blue eyes. She held no candle to Aundrea. The maid only disappeared when the moon was able to see even without the candle's spark. That was when it was deemed safe for her to hunt in her powerful form, as long as she cleaned up her mess and hung the keel close to the stable master's home, leaving him a gift that he never knew where it came from. All he knew was he would go to bed the meat hook spare when he turned out his lantern. Then come morning would have a fresh deer carcass hanging, even the hide removed cleanly as if by the most skilled hands of a master butcher. Lady Stuart always sent old gown, quote unquote, old gowns to the maid to keep her from appearing a bloody mess the next day, which were always received with delight and much gratitude. Angelique needed the finest of everything, but the object of her biggest jealousy was Aundrea, which she didn't fully understand why the maid who was too low in status and she was already Lord Liam's intended, even the present Laird had already decreed it after making the arrangement with her father. Still knowing that the stable girl would always distract him, Angelique started her plan, even telling the Laird of what she had spied out her window. Her jealousy sealed Andrea's fate when she saw from her tower, facing the pasture, as the forbidden lovers held each other, thinking they were hidden and out of sight, and had his royal ring not glinted in the moonlight, her anger would not have been spurred. The insolence of how he could dance with her at the mask, yet hold the stable maiden in the moonlight, Those thoughts are what would cause her to endure the darkest of sorrows and even seal her marriage's doom. The Laird did everything she had wished, from arranging the marriage and the mask ball, and now he would order the stablemate to be executed for using her beauty to turn his son into a senseless fool, by enchanting him to raise her own station to a courtesan or higher. The thoughts were racing as she watched the couple below embrace each other. She started to create her plan. She smirked wickedly. Soon she would tell her jealousy to rest in peace. If only she could have held her tongue, maybe the fate's woven tapestry might have left her in delight. But jealousy is a beast untamed and unchallenged. Thus, even her perfect future would doom itself. Chapter 1. Interesting, interesting, interesting. The starting of a timeless devotion. Lord Ronald James III had a son, but the son was not controlled by the rules of status and had to be watched and disciplined constantly. James was of a marrying age, but he wouldn't marry in his status, stating that the only princess he wanted was a queen who would fight to be at his side, not just some brainless arm candy. James had earth-brown eyes and thick wavy hair combined with a tall warrior-like frame that made so many women swoon. Yet, as he had charmed so many women high class and peasant alike, he still couldn't turn the one head that always had his curiosity raised. A young but widowed peasant matron, Samuela, caught the eye of the young Lord James Stuart. Samuela had always been kind and always the healer for her neighbors. Her father had made sure that she could do things that many wouldn't even attempt, even the doctors. She had many roles, even in her peasant garb. Most saw her kind heart in her eyes and the gentleness in her, how she raised her son Liam after her husband was indentured and sent away. Okay, I just wanted to, with him in the hospital, I just want to check on my messages. I apologize. Normally I try to ignore them, but that wasn't anything to. And I got another. Shelby was taking her son to the ER for a headache or something too. So that's another story altogether. So I just wanted to make sure. Samuela had always been kind and always the healer for her neighbors. Her father had made sure that she could do things that many wouldn't even attempt, even the doctors. She had many roles, even in her peasant garb. Most saw her kind heart in her eyes and the gentleness in how she raised her son Liam after her husband was indentured and sent away. The family farm had a few creatures that weren't of the normal kinds within a farm. There were weasels and there were ravens, and all were fed well, even with just her and little Liam to care for them. Samuela was a beauty, her hair the color of golden wheat, with eyes that matched the color of the cerulean sea. She seemed oblivious to him, never going any farther than a simple and polite curtsy, then back to gathering flowers or herbs of the season. It only made her more mysterious, and then the different animals that would just appear when she clicked her tongue, including a great black horse that would kneel like a knight before a queen so that she could mount its bare back with her filled basket in hand, and then with a quick whistle and a hand to its mane, the great beast would walk as if there was nothing. But a fly was on its as if there was nothing but a fly on its back. It shocked him to see such beauty between woman and horse. He would have commissioned a painting for the memory of the pure beauty and the connection between the two. One dark year, Laird Ronald was challenged to battle by a neighboring kingdom, and the prize would be the lands of the failing army and the countryside surrounding. As word of this spread through the village, Samuela stepped up in her husband's armor, leaving young Liam to care for the farm with a neighbor watching him, of course, and she went to battle with the rest of the knights, no one asking after seeing the ivory coat of arms branded into her shield. She went in her husband's armor with his great battle axe. Into battle they went, each kingdom expecting the other to falter, to retreat as soon as the night hit. Into battle she rode with the men the cavalry set in place. The archers took their positions, waiting for the signal to shoot. Laird Ronald rode to meet the opposed, and then as they turned, Laird Ronald was shot in the back by the enemy. Expecting the army to cower without their Laird to lead them, Laird James took his father's mount, and into battle he rode, leading a siege that caused the very trees to tremble. That was when all followed across the open meadow. James watched each soldier fall and watched as even the cavalry rode in from two sides, attacking the enemy from both sides. That was when one soldier stood out to him. At first, he thought it was just a glint of sunlight across the meadow of the night, and then he realized as she jumped from the saddle of the great black beast, shield and battle axe at the ready, he realized that his warrior was one of a queen than a foot soldier. Her helmet fell to the ground, her golden tresses tied back, but the blood and war paint that she wore was a fierce fury, taking out soldiers first at the knees. He almost laughed as a group of the enemy tried to force her to the forest. One brute taunting her until with one swing she took out the back of his knee with her axe, the blood gushing as the tendons and arteries snapped under the pressure. He then tried to swing his sword, only to watch his sword arm fall as if it was made of butter, fresh from the churn. The rest of the group started to retreat at the moment, dragging their fallen comrade to the safety of their burnt-out camp. The soldier clicked her tongue until her great beast came to her like a puppy, eagerly finding its master. The great beast knelt again and helped its rider mount, even lifting a hoof to help her slide her up onto its powerful back. The enemy general came to pay homage to the fierce warrior and then had his men flogged for being beat by a woman. The treaty was signed between the new Laird and the enemy general, giving all lands and estates to the victor as it was agreed upon. James's eyes lit up as he saw Samuela's shadow slide into the stream, the cold water washing her armor and cleansing her wounds. He sent the rest of the men to clean up camp and collect what was still useful as the enemy retreated, dragging their dead along with them. He went to the stream and noticing the needle and thread and a vial of some clear liquid, he was instantly worried about her. He said, "Soldier, do you need help?" Hearing his voice, she gulped and answered her superior, "No, sir." She took off her breastplate and removed the chainmail, placing both lovingly in the grass as if it were a finely stitched gown. Then took off her boots and leggings and slid further into the stream so that nothing could be seen. Unfortunately for her, Laird James was not so dumb that he didn't notice the mark on her shoulders, and he walked into the stream to examine the mark, and that was when he saw the mark that had been branded into her by her own father, the mark of the wolf only worn by the strongest of the pack. He knew then that there was mystery within her blood, and that there was more to be found, but first he would have to earn her trust before she would divulge what he so wanted to know. He watched as she threaded the needle and poured some of the fluid from the vial across the wound, and then painstakingly started to sew the roughly cut skin together. The stitches precise, quick and even until she got to where it was difficult to reach. Then she jumped as if shocked as he took the needle from her hand and gently took over her stitching, though his was not nearly as neat as hers had been, though it still closed the wound. He then turned his back and walked back to the rest of his men, making his way to where his father, who lay in a puddle of crimson. The arrow had already been pulled, but it had torn through his stomach as badly as his sword blade. Samuela was mysterious, but she had her reasons for sticking to herself and caring for her child and her departed husband's farm day in and day out. Her way with herbs and even the candles that she would sell when times were more than difficult always had the greatest care put into even the wax. There were times when her whole farm area would smell of lavender and even sweet thistle oil as she took a day to make the wax and then another day to create and dip the candles that took yet 3 days a candle to heat and cool, then heat again and thread the wicks. She would gather flowers and spend hours mixing color dyes for clothes and other things that others might need. A family 2 farms over needed clothing for their daughters, and Samuela made sure that the little ones had what they so desperately needed. Her mystery was what she kept hidden in a journal with the world tree worked into the leather that had been her mother's hand. And now that she dreamed of passing to Liam when he came of age. It held all the secrets that had to be kept hidden within the family bloodline. No one would understand except a few others, and even they were not to be trusted. He was the richest man beneath his father, who only lived long enough to return to the castle and announce that his son would succeed him and was ready to take the throne, and the most handsome man who could provide for her and her son Liam. Lord James was kind and a gentleman he courted her as if her station was of no consequence, even paying for Liam's tutoring so he could be adopted by the Laird and eventually succeed him to the throne when the time came. As for Samuela, he would be her savior from a life that he was sure she wasn't meant to be. She was married to the Laird within a fortnight and enjoyed all the adulations of being lady of the keep. She was bought a dark mountain horse, but her original great beast was her only enjoyment, other than her son. The great beast was gentle as she. Lady Samuela named her Ired for her spirit. Ired was free range when she found a small swaddle bundle and very gently and tenderly, softly lifted until she could pick it up and brought it to her lady. As she handed the swaddle bundle out, popped the tiny paw of a cat, but Lady Samuela knew there was more to this little one as she gently picked up the cub. It started to change shape to that of a human child. A mass of dark curls cascaded down the back of the little girl. Her eyes were as wide and as dark as a fawn. That is how the lady came up with a name for the child. Aundrea, for one so small, she already knew she would have more intellect and power than anyone would ever know. Chapter 2, His Keep. Liam Stewart III watched with his eyes all aglow, knowing that there were a few that would take from his keep, even its thousands of years of disrepair, the treasures it held hidden deep within. This was his territory, and yet again, being invaded, there was something coming, but what he did not know. His need to defend what was and is his turning into a deafening demand as the sun started to set upon his land. He had stood all day watching, crouched, ready to pounce as he always had since the night his heart was turned to stone, and so did he to the very statue with a forced vow to someone he could barely be civil with. His forced bride was a snob, the very definition of what he never wanted. A single tear slipped down his cheek as it turned to flesh with the last glimmer of sunset, with the thought of his past. His predatory instinct suddenly kicked in as he smelled blood in the air. Something or someone was wounded to feast or watch. That was his choice. That was when he saw her with the old groundskeeper. Their voices mumbled, but he could sense her delight, even though she was terrified of the idea of being alone on this beautiful yet hauntingly peaceful property. The old caretaker held out his hand and helped her up when she stumbled on her wounded ankle. Gregory always was the kind-hearted sort, even with the family secret still known this many generations later. Now just a local legend of lovers separated by cruelty, but the truth behind it broke his heart. She looked up at the gargoyles that still stood guard, taking in the beauty in the beastly stone carvings. As the elderly groundskeeper moved on, she dipped into a deep curtsy, her scent coming to him on a breeze. It smelled of blood and pine and wisteria oil. He hid his frame in stone, hiding as he smelled the air. As hidden in a visitor's scent, the smell of prey so terrified, and yet she was so strong. So she wants to explore, he thought as he glanced down from his tower, the smell of the woods all over her. A wound from an earlier fall still dripping crimson, tears, yet the determination in her eyes was that of the guardian of the forest green, a legend that ran wild through the country. She had been foretold of a creature who had the power to see both the seen and the unseen. The crimson brought his hunger, but his desire to watch and see grew stronger, remembering that such a creature did once exist in his very court. But he had dishonored her by choosing another. Another tear started to glide down his cheek. He hastily wiped it away as he watched the blur of movement below him. She would be his first victim, and yet there was something familiar about her. Her form spoke of a maid, shy and quiet, but her eyes spoke of a wilderness that tempted him to watch her. A treasure lost to a time long ago, like a memory that was hidden deep within a treasured book burnt in the fire. Maybe it was just a flight of fancy, but he found himself hoping she would stay in the ruins of his keep. As Aundrea reached to pull the large oak sliver from her shoulder, she winced as the crimson began to seep through. She had wanted to see this place for 20 years now, and a little pain would not stop her now. She had studied the myths and the legends. The tragedies tore at her heartstrings, and on some days her memories would shatter and scatter across to the distant shore. Instinctively, she knew that here was where she would find the truth behind her dreams. She already knew deep within the complexity of her mind, she had been drawn to nature like a shield maiden ready to defend. So, with her scarf covering her wound, not realizing how alone she truly was, the gargoyle grew angry as he watched the tour group keep going as she fell further and further behind. So, what you guys talking about? Hey, Miss Billy. You running late tonight? Can't believe I wandered so far from the group, she thought, but the sound of the harp had entranced me. The solemn tune in this long, almost forgotten castle with views all around. Lord help, I gotta get a haircut, y'all. I knew not to follow the sound, but in curiosity, the need was too great. Then, as she entered the room, the harpist seemed to disappear. A vision of stormy eyes was all that registered as she did peer into the room to the harp. She dipped low in a deep curtsy. Something others would have said was silly, but she felt the need to respect this spectral artist. To her surprise, the stool moved as if to say, Here your turn, my lady. So to the stools she softly stepped, sitting and placing her fingers upon the strings. She started to strum what she felt as if weaving a spell long ago forgotten. Visualizing the scene, she lightly strummed the gentle wind and the leaves that were dancing within. She wove the magical scene of the peaceful meadow with its gentle hills and even the beauty of the bubbling brook and the click-clack of the herd of does' hooves against the ground as they rushed for the cover of the trees. Then she saw the great protector of the herd, a beautiful stag of silver and tan. He had been avoiding hunters for years, but could he protect his harem this time? She could see the hunt of the great stag, the fierceness and the strategy used to outwit such noble prey as all galloped to the beat of the great stag's hoofbeats. Sorry, sometimes I actually read the word rather than reading what it's supposed to be. I read the spelling rather than the word. She could see the final shot as a great creature fall, crashing into the twigs and leaves and underbrush. In the vision with it, a tear was shed. For all that he was, and the beauty is hidden within this summer's end, that was when she saw the grand ball, the festivities that came, all the masquerades, and the finery that seemed to gleam in a time gone by, as if she was seeing them dancing within this grand room, in a memory or a daydream, she couldn't be sure. He sat on his throne as this mortal enchanted his heart with each strum of the harp's dust-covered strings, invisible to her, but still too proud to let even the sound of his tears reach her tender ears. This songstress was beautiful by far. The song seemed as if it sent her memory back to the time before, as it did his, back to the time before he was tortured and cursed with a heart of stone. How he had forgotten what it was like to be the lord of the castle. In life, he had no true lady at his side, for the one he wanted to be his bride was sent to the executioner because of his father's damnable pride. That is why, that wretched night, he decided to ride. His beloved lady, whom he had wanted, had to had to him been denied simply because of her lower station. He still remembered the dark earthen and honey-colored locks, and how even when she had pinned them up, they seemed to have a wildness within them, almost like the wildness he sensed when this creature who had come to his castle. In truth, it was just the ruins, in all honesty, but it was and is his home for eternity. This songstress seemed lost in her weaving of song. The gaggle or tour that had entered with her within the castle seemed to have left. None seemed to even take note that she was left here on the grounds. He sat there listening and wept while she played. Then he glanced at a portrait that hung above where she played so delicately. It was of a woman with braided brown hair upon a white horse with sun golden mane. He had fancied her running wild and free, and almost like Epona upon such a steed. Then he looked again at the songstress. It was almost as if she could sense him. She glanced up at the empty throne, and as she placed a kiss on the harp, she whispered, "Thank you." She dipped low into a deep curtsy to the empty throne, as if she knew for whom she had played. Her eyes lowered, but the tears were still swelling, even swimming, and not so well hidden as "Your Highness." No louder than a soft whisper was all that was left. But as she rose and turned to the doorway, he heard her heart start to break as the tears escaped, falling and staining the dust-covered stone floors like the storm outside, would darken the broken shells of the guardians. She stepped out into the hall. Not surprising, she felt the chilly breeze from the missing section of wall as the wind was hastily picking up speed as the clouds began darkening. She could feel the storm building, it like something she had always been able to call to when she was sad. She had a storm coming. She could feel it because nestled within it was the fury that dwelled within her, ready for the show of strength. She had hidden the storm within for so long it had built up for the last couple of years, seems to be eons. Now she had two choices: either to stay and huddle in the ruins of this once beautiful castle, its gargoyles still standing watch, or to get lost in the darkness and the storm. She knew she could find a way to stay warm if she stayed. So to the old kitchen she hastily walked. She had seen the old coal piles that would keep her warm for the night. To his delight, she stayed. This mortal who had shown such sorrow hidden in the beauty of a tune, he was amazed by her skill as well as her intuitive instincts. She had built a fire within one of the ovens as she sat back on her haunches, surrounded by scattered bits of stone and dusty cobwebs. She looked enchanting, as if she was surrounded by the finery this castle once contained. But as she sat there, keeping warm, she fancied that she might as well have knelt in front of a weaving loom while a large fire lit and warmed the room. Out of out a window she seemed to gaze. Soundlessly he stepped behind her, careful not to frighten her, as his curiosity seemed to lead his gaze to follow hers. A break in the storm that had been pounding the ruins, even the clouds seemed to part, showing the moon in its fullest beauty. The silvery light gently outlined her face. To him, all the sounds, even the roar of the fire, seemed to die out. Suddenly, she let out a soft growl, then perked an ear to listen for an answering call from a wild one far in the mountains. Knowing that something was there seemed to make her smile more contentedly. The light in her smile reminded him of the warmth of a star on a moonless night. He did his best to shake such a fancy from his mind. This woman had a strange scent about her, but it intrigued him that was when he let out a sigh. That was when she turned. She heard the breath as if it were behind her. Yet when she turned to face what or whoever it was, there only to see nothing. She wandered back to the room with the harp, hearing soft yet heavy footsteps behind her. She went back and sat with the harp once more and looked longingly around at all that seemed to have stayed, even though there was only a part-time caretaker. She looked at the portrait, dusty but still very eloquently detailed. In the portrait, a couple stood, possibly the Laird and his lady, on their wedding day. It must have been a wonderful day, as he stood proudly beside her with his arm was draped around her waist, and the lady had her hair over her shoulder, a crown of silver within her hair. They must have stood like that for hours to have such a beautiful, eternal moment that would last forever. How happy they must have been. She started to play the harp for them as she gazed into the sad eyes hidden behind the proud visage mask of the Laird. So she played a tune that was soft like a sonnet of the heart that was never spoken. Unknown to her, the portrayed groom stooped down beside her, listening as she started to hum with the chords, the sounds so melodious that his ears strained for each heart softening yet tearing note. If she knew his if she knew his true form, he knew that she would run. But here with him only in mental spirit, he could give in to the desire to listen like a charmed creature awaiting the touch of such a fair maiden. As he sat there on his haunches, he stared at the portrait of himself made so long ago. His wedding day, when he did as he was ordered to marry Angelique Dubellay, she had been everything for one of her family lines. Perfect in every way, but even she knew she was not the woman he truly loved. She had grown cold and distant as the stone that had encased his heart of hearts. Her every movement was deliberate and calculated, even in how she wore her hair or used her favorite fan to bluntly flirt with the guards, and then had the poor gentleman put to death, which she would watch with horrifying delight. In a way, he was happy that the curse had sealed his heart off completely, encasing him in stone. Even then, he had to watch her after his fate was sealed, for his keep was his, and that was when she leaped from the tower because she could not rule even as queen without her favorite to torture her. He often disappeared every evening on a nightly ride, taking scraps from the royal dinners to some unknown place. That was before he had been changed, not for cruelty, but because of his desire to protect the memory of one that was condemned. He was not forced to change into a wolf, but a great winged beast of stone meant to eternally survive in sorrow. A single tear strayed down his cheek as he remembered the rushed wedding and the horrible woman to whom he had been forced to wed. But he knew the one he truly loved was dead, as it was his father's last cruel punishment. As he remembered watching when his beloved lay her head on the block the very night he had ridden past where her braid had fallen as he started to weep, he disappeared as off his chin the tears started to fall. Upon hearing a single droplet of water hitting the stone, she looked up to see a single droplet of water, not fearing whatever it was that had been tearing. She continued the song as if to soothe the one who was weeping. She knew the legends and the myths of this land to this very keeps memories of old, both the told and untold. The tales were of woe and of sorrow that turned something or someone to stone, such a sadness as she glanced back at the portrait for a place so lovely, even when the storm wept and showed the fury that had been within her for so long, trapped like a forgotten memory, waking in full fiery truth. Her heart felt like it would break because of the tales that made her heartache, or so she thought. Back in his room in the southernmost tower, he listened to the softness of the song that he had left in what was once the great hall. His tears hit the silken pillows that laid at his feet. The song haunted his mind as well as his heart. It was seamless memory hidden. It was a seamless memory hidden in the melody that brought back memories that should have been scattered to the winds long ago. Looking down at his treasure, a simple braid laid at the base of what stood as a symbol of his heartache. It was falling apart, but it still seemed to contain her scent, the scent of his beloved that he had lost so long ago. Its scent still held memories of terror and of passion. In some places, it contained the wildflowers she had woven into the pattern. How he had loved that beautiful servant girl that had the spirit of a sprite and a wildness that was never to be tamed. He started to weep as he remembered calling her a hellcat for being obstinate and not staying in her lovely position. Not that he was a saint, but she had shoved him into a pile of horse manure. A sad smile lifted his lips when he thought of the woman currently walking his halls, and slightly the smile started to reach his eyes. Her sweetness was a mask to the wildness he sensed was hidden, kept deep within. Though he knew she would never see him, at least not in the form that he wished she could see. As the dawn, as at dawn, his form would change, turning to stone as he would return to being a guardian within these fallen ruins. He listened as she played the tune until dawn. Then, as she drifted off to slumber, he made one last visit to cover her with a silken blanket he had cherished as a child. Then to his place at the top of the southernmost tower to stand watch over his treasures. As soon as the sun rose, he knelt and screamed as his wings sprung forth from his shoulders and turning into flame and hardening to stone. The pain ripping his heart again as his memories started to replay of that awful night of the panther he had found on the ride. He hoped it had survived for many years after their encounter. As the warmth from the sun covered him in the warmth of its rays, he allowed the evening replay within his mind as he listened for the tune that may free him someday. She woke up with the warmth of the sun blazing through the window. The fire she had built had only survived until about dawn. Somehow she had found a blanket in these old ruins. It smelled of decades of dust built up and a musky smell of pine oil. Then she found the truth hidden beneath the dust. After wiping away some of the dust from the corner, she found I don't know this word. Tricutra? A symbol she knew quite well. To others, it was mind, body, and spirit connected as one. But she knew the truth to the tales that it was nature's true heart hidden in a simple design. She had been connected to the symbols since she could remember. She wondered who would have been so kind as to cover her so gently. She shook the silly thought from her mind. She knew she was alone here in this great kitchen. He watched over her nightly, standing guard like he did over his other timeless treasures. One night she had fallen asleep while repairing the faded tapestry, its colors depleted by the hands of time. He looked at it and wondered if she knew what it truly revealed. It spoke of his family tree and of how the truth had not been so hidden, for it told of the truth to his punishment. As he slid his hand across the stitching of the bloody braid, and then of his father slain by an unknown beast, he gently took it from her lap, folding it delicately and laying it silently upon her basket of threads and thimbles. He went and got her blanket to cover her. That was when she turned her head, her eyes still closed, but that wasn't what caused him to stop in shock at what he saw. As he slipped a pillow beneath her head, it was a single teardrop that had seeped past her delicate lashes and had begun to slide down her delicate cheek. He gently wiped it away from the feel of warmth, making his mind go crazy, leaving him wondering what she kept hidden behind that delicate mask she wore. The smile that she woke up with, a smile like a morning glory blooming in the sun, always his last sight before he turned back to stone, just before the sun completely rose over the horizon. The more he watched her mannerisms, from the way she smiled as she cleaned each remaining room, clearing away centuries worth of dust and cobwebs, as if she had done so before 1,000 times, even polishing the antique wooden furniture to a high gloss, using nothing more than beeswax from the old hives out in the field just beyond what was his mother's flower garden. It, like the ruins, had been overgrown with ivy and weeds. Yet for every weed she removed, this woman would transplant each dandelion closer to the hives, knowing that in the spring, after Candlemas and the first thaw of the year, the bees would need the nectar that would seem to bloom overnight. She even seemed to bring life to the garden, transplanting heather and even a wisteria tree, adding more beauty to the forgotten garden. And that brings us to chapter 3, which is called Painful Memories, which I'm not going to read to you. You have to go get the book. Thank you, Miss Aundrea, for letting me read this. It's very interesting. I like this. I was looking to see if Hedwig is out here yet, and he's not. He'll be out here another 10, 15 minutes. Hedwig would be my pet owl that I've never petted. That's wild, that just likes to come and see me. So this story is called Timeless Devotion, and it's a story, it's a love story that's written over the ages. So go get it, read it, and support your indie authors, especially our newbies. Come on. Alrighty. So I'm gonna get out from here and go pass out, go do something, or I don't know, watch a ball game. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'm in quarantine. No, I have not named the skunk. Well, I named the skunk from this morning, and I'm calling it a she because she's solid white on top, and then just her undercarriage is black. So of course her name is Snow White. Can't help it. Owls and chickens and skunks. Oh my, that's what I got going on around here. I'm hoping you enjoyed it, Aundrea. So, all right, everybody, have a great weekend. Stay safe. Beware that COVID is on the rise. I should know. So be careful if you go out. Mask up, please, everybody. No, I don't have a pet owl. I have an owl. I have a young great horn owl that has started coming around about between 9 and 9:15 every night, and he gets under the Bradford pear trees on the ground out here, and he just irritates the songbirds and eats bugs. And then when it gets really dark, he's gone. That's all I know. Thank you, Aundrea. I will get well eventually. So, all righty. I will talk to you guys later, and have a great weekend. Happy reading.